for yesterday.
Oh, he's on
Burned his
school
brand
bus.
new
or getting ready to drop them somewhere or
Okay.
something, yeah.
You know something?
I think he was getting ready to carry them somewhere, or they had just got there or
Probably.
something.
So he
baseball
come for
trip.
it.
Okay.
Probably a baseball
Well,
trip.
that's fine.
He didn't say it was, he said an event, so, but, and I forgot, he did leave early, so I don't know if we set this time before or after he left.
Oh, that's right, you did.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
So we ready?
But you sent out an email, so.
Couple minutes before. I'll call this workshop to order, Gilchrist County, Board of County Commissioners, Fire and EMS Facility Surtax Workshop. Who's gonna be in charge?
Mr. Newton will take.
Yeah, I think I'll take it over. Do we want to do the prayer and flag?
Well, my boss crossed it out, y'all wanna do it?
Yeah. That'd probably mean we don't have one following, so.
Okay. We'll just do it at the next meeting, how about that?
All right. Sounds good. Well, we are here to talk about the fire and EMS facilities surtax. You'll find on your first slide, it gives a little bit of a breakdown of the surtax itself, the history of it. So who actually has the authority to levy this tax? It's basically any county in the state of Florida, with the exception of Madison and Miami-Dade.
Why can't they?
There are other taxes that they currently have in place, which eliminates the ability. There's a maximum amount of additional taxes that you can levy as a county. And so if you have certain taxes levied, you can't levy other taxes. And so Madison has,
So this is a tax that's on anything that's bought in our county?
correct, this is on sales tax.
So gas,
This is not gas related.
okay, so
This is
anything else?
strictly, anything else that has a sales tax on it.
Okay.
So, speaking of which, since we're kind of already discussing that, something to bear in mind on this is, everything you buy does not have a sales tax on it. So, when you consider unprepared foods, things like that at grocery stores, that does not apply. You don't pay sales tax on any of those items.
People on the farm that's tax exempt, yeah.
Correct. So basically, anything that's exempt from sales tax does not apply to what we're discussing today. But what are the uses for this particular surtax? So it may be used to fund fire rescue facilities and services. The Florida statute's 212.055, and this is specifically subsection 8. It provides up to 1% sales tax, and these are the provisions it can be used for emergency fire rescue services, which includes preventing and extinguishing fires, protecting and saving life and property from fires or natural or intentional acts or disasters, enforcing municipal, county, or state fire prevention codes and laws pertaining to the prevention and control of fires, and also providing pre-hospital emergency medical treatment. So those are the things that this surtax can be utilized for. In order to adopt this, the board does have to adopt it by a majority vote through an ordinance. Once an ordinance is passed by the board, it would actually have to go to a referendum and be voted on in a general election.
Oh.
If it's successful in a referendum, then the ordinance would be adopted. So basically what that means is that should the board choose to go this direction, the board would actually pass an ordinance. Nothing happens at that point except for starting the process.
Right.
And we'll talk a little bit more about what that process is in just a minute. But if the board approves it, then it goes to referendum and only becomes effective if approved by a majority of the citizens that vote in that general election.
So it doesn't have to be percentage, just if it's 1 over, then?
Correct. So basically, it just has to be a majority.
Okay.
Majority being 50 plus 1?
Yep.
Correct. So it's not a 60% passage, it's a 50%. This would be, well, it just has to be in a general election. So if the board were to choose to move forward 2026 would be the first opportunity.
Oh, wow.
So November of next year would be your first opportunity to put this to vote.
And if it passes, it starts on January 1st of the year following the election.
Very, very correct, yeah. So if it were to go to general in November of next year and approved by the voters, January 1st of 2027 is when this would actually go into effect and your sales tax would be in effect. Just to give you a little bit of history, Hamilton County did actually vote on this past November, and their citizens did approve it. So theirs would have started, I guess, January of this year, based on approval.
Todd, did they have a special assessment in place that
I-
had to be replaced?
So I don't believe they do. I think they only have an ad valorem tax. And so theirs is a little different scenario than ours, and we'll go into more detail about, how it's specific to us. Just a little bit more about this tax, though. If it were to go into effect, we do have to share, kind of like we share with the municipalities in the county for other discretionary sales tax. With this, the board is required to share with any municipality that provides rescue services and choosing to participate. So it's both of those factors. So
With
what that
Trenton,
means-
Go ahead.
Trenton and Fanning Springs would be eligible to participate,
Right.
but they have to choose to participate.
But they couldn't choose for both because they don't have a rescue, they just have fire.
They
They
just
don't
have fire, but this is a single surtax. So
It's called emergency fire.
it's
rescue.
called Emergency Fire Rescue
Lumped together.
Services and Facilities
So
surtax.
would they get, if they participated, would they get 100% of it or would, or?
I'll give you a breakdown. and,
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
a couple slides down, I'll show you kind of what does it look like potentially for the other municipalities. But just so you know, Bell would not be included in this because Bell does not provide fire or EMS services. So they are not inclusive in this. But Trenton and Fanning Springs would be eligible to receive funds if they choose to participate. And again, the limitation on this is a 1%, up to 1% sales tax.
So we could participate and they could participate, but what if we participate and they don't? They still get a part of ours?
No, basically, if they choose to participate, there's a method for determining how much each entity receives. But if they choose not to, so for instance, let's say Trenton chose to, but Fanning said, no, we're not going to participate.
Right.
They would not receive any. The rest would be distributed based on Gilchrist County and the city of Trenton, or vice versa. If Fanning said yes, but Trenton said no, then Trenton's portion would be distributed based on what's left. So,
And it's gonna be voted on countywide, they won't like take
correct.
each
No,
city out.
it'll be
Mr. Roman, Finance Director, by the way, this is, the county will receive all of the funds.
Okay.
But it is our responsibility to then share it with the Springs and Fanning Springs if they participate. Otherwise, we get off.
Kind of like gas tax.
exactly.
Well, it's exactly like that, I believe. I mean, the money goes to the Department of Revenue, then they shoot it back to you, and then you distribute it out to the cities. Correct?
No, not like that.
No, I'm saying, on
Oh,
this one,
yeah.
it says, if you adopt this ordinance, the levy, the
Correct.
tax that's collected goes to the Department of Revenue, and they turn around and send it back to the county for you to distribute to the city.
Todd, you're gonna get into the advantages or disadvantages of this, because what I heard last time was either replace something we're already doing, so it's not
Correct.
a new tax.
That's right. And that's actually one of the requirements of this is that if you put this in place, it's not in addition to. It has to replace something.
Takes the place of.
Correct. It doesn't like provide the ability to fund additional services. It's a different funding method for providing a service.
Essentially spreads out the source of where you collect the funds.
Correct. Correct. And our very last slide is actually going to kind of give you a breakdown of that and like what it could mean if we were to implement this, like how would it affect each funding service that funding source that we currently have now.
Try not to answer, ask them more
No, that's all right. I
questions.
don't, questions are good.
Cause I
but-
was looking, you do have a lot of stuff. in
Yeah,
there.
I'm hoping we do answer all of your questions in the slides, but if you do have a question, sometimes it's better to ask it because you may forget.
You can just tell it's in there, be patient.
Right, right. Because it may be something that I don't have in here. So upon the surtax taking effect and the initiation of collections, and this is what we were just talking about, each local government entity receiving a share of surtax proceeds shall reduce the ad valorem tax levy or any non-ad valorem assessment for fire control and emergency fire rescue services in its next and subsequent budgets by the estimated amount of revenue provided by the surtax. So if we receive X number of dollars, we're going to have to reduce our fire assessment and our MSTU by the amount that is going to be collected, okay? And then the following year, you're going to make adjustments based on what you received. So if we're going to have an estimate from the state, and based on that estimate, we're going to set our budgets, but then the following year, you're going to see, all right, we actually received X dollars, and we're going to have to adjust our next year's budget based on the amount that we actually received. So if we receive more than was projected, then we're going to have to reduce those other revenue sources
So
even
do you
further.
have to reduce, both at the same time, or can you, just like pick, for example, just fire and just work on fire?
So we would be doing it based on a nexus of the revenues received.
Right.
So
Would you have to reduce both, like fire and EMS at the same time?
we would basically, yes, ma'am,
Okay.
because, in essence, we receive revenues from both sources right now. And so we're going to have to reduce those incrementally.
The way we're doing it, our landowners are supplying the revenue.
That is correct.
If we change to this, then anybody that buys anything in Gilchrist County, I don't care if you're from New York, but if you
Right.
buy something that charges
Correct.
sales tax, then you would help fund it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Tourists are going to be able to participate and contribute, which, and the thing, when you think about it, potentially those folks that are visiting, in particular tourists, that come in and potentially an event occurs, where they require our services, there's no way, other than if they take an ambulance ride, where they're going to get, a bill for that service. But, if the ambulance comes out to see them and, takes care of them and then drives away, there's no way for that person to have been charged for utilizing our services. Whereas if they're, purchasing items that have sales tax in Gilchrist County, at that point, they are helping to contribute to the potential services that they might use. So moving on to slide 4. So should the board choose to pass an ordinance to move forward with this, the next step is we notify the state, and the state is actually, prior to the actual referendum, they're going to do a performance audit of our program of fire and EMS, and this must be done by an independent CPA. The timing of the audit, it must be completed and published on our website at least 60 days prior to the date of the general election in November next year. And OPAGA is actually responsible for the selection of the CPA firm that's going to perform the audit. But here's the good news, the state actually does pay for the audit. So it's a requirement that they have it, but at least, it's not an expense to us to get it initiated. So
And the
I think,
purpose would be to get a guesstimation of what it might be, or what we should do.
well, I think it probably has to do with, how much you're going to receive, but it's going to basically do an audit of our actual fire and EMS departments. And now, to be honest, I mean, I've never read anything that indicates what the purpose of, like for this particular sales tax, I'm not sure what they're looking for, like what they're auditing for. But, they would basically just be auditing our fire and EMS program.
Well,
And,
my thought would be, when we did the bed tax,
Mhm.
the tourist tax,
Sure.
they gave a projection of what we would collect based on the 1%, 1.5%, whatever it started out at, and they come up at like $7,000 a year.
Right.
We actually wound up collecting $21,000 the first year, three
Yeah.
times what this. So I'm just looking at, okay, last year you collected X number of dollars in sales tax. So this year, if you add another penny, we'll tack another penny on that. That'll give us some number to look at. Cause we would
Well,
have to have some
they-
type of,
Well, they've already provided that. We have an estimate, currently. So the performance audit is different. It's gonna be looking at something different. Again, I'm not exactly sure
if
what
they paying for
that
it,
plays. I know the state required this OPAGA audit to be done anytime, a municipality or county government tries to initiate a new tax. And so again, the objective of the audit and what they're searching for and looking for within the audit, that I couldn't tell you. But it's just a requirement that the legislature put into effect, back, 2019, that any new sales tax, or any new, county, like tax on property owners, is gonna require this audit.
Chief Campbell Fire Rescue, Union County had one of these studies done in 2022. And just a quick outline, effective economy, efficiency, or effectiveness of the program, structure, design of the program, alternate methods of providing program services or products, goals and performance measures, accuracy of public documents and reports, and compliance with policies, rules, and laws. Very brief description, but as you read through on this, it's going through and saying, hey, they did this because of this. It's about 100-page report. It's got a lot of detail in it.
So basically what they're doing, I guess, is they're looking at our fire and EMS program to make sure that it's effective and following,
the right procedure.
proper state guidelines and,
So how would that be different than did we have an assessment done? Can that increase in the assessment?
that's a little bit different. It's similar, I think. I think it would be similar to what they did, but, I guess they're gonna be looking at some additional things as well.
I think the study we had was a projection and a need based on our area, number of people, how people are spaced out, and that type of thing. It kind of sounds like what Chief Campbell just brought up. They're gonna look at what we're actually doing now and
Yeah.
make sure there is a benefit to the citizens if we're gonna be collecting this money. And
Yes.
we're not collecting $2 million to have a volunteer fire department. We don't have any volunteers per se, or
Right.
something like that.
Right, exactly. You're not creating a tax that's not gonna be
Yeah.
for the purposes that it was, initiated for. So if you flip over to page 5 of your slides, this is a history of our discretionary sales surtax. So currently, Gilchrist County does have a 1% discretionary sales surtax on, everything that's purchased. So this is what 1% has generated over time. As you can see, back in 2005, it generated around $600,000.
Is this with, fuel included?
No, ma'am, this is strictly sales tax.
Oh, sales, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So you can kind of see the history of it over time. In the last 20 years, the amount collected has actually tripled. This, for 2024, estimated to be $1,889,000.
So 1 cent.
1 cent, yep. And so that is the number that we are looking at for an estimate for collection. Flipping over to the next slide, this is actually the local discretionary sales surtax. So not the tax that we're talking about, but the actual current sales tax that we have in place.
Okay.
So countywide, estimate $2,145,384. Of that, Gilchrist County would receive $1,805,000. Bell receives around $55,000. Fanning, in part, because they receive from Levy County as well, in part receives around $59,500. The city of Trenton, a little over $225,000. So when you're looking at the sales tax that we're talking about, and this is coming straight out of Florida Statute 212-055. it says that the county shall distribute the proceeds it receives from the department to each local government entity providing emergency fire rescue services in the county. And then I'm going to drop down a little bit further, and it says each entity's average annual expenditures for fire control and emergency fire rescue services in the 5 fiscal years preceding the fiscal year in which the surtax takes effect, in proportion to the average annual total of the expenditures for such entities in the 5 fiscal years preceding the fiscal year in which the surtax takes effect. So that is the calculation that's utilized to determine how do you split this, you know, if other entities are involved, other municipalities. Flipping over to slide 7, you're going to see a breakdown. So Richard and Tanya went on to the websites of the city of Trenton and Fanning Springs, and we calculated our numbers. And so if you look at, these are the prior 5 fiscal years. So on average, the total for the BOCC was $2,756,000. That's for fire and EMS.
Was how much?
$2,756,000. For the city of Trenton, their fire average was $126,000. And for the city of Fanning, it was an average of just over $280,000. So that is what you would use as your percentages should the city of Trenton and the city of Fanning choose to participate. Of the amount received, the county would receive a little over 87%, the city of Trenton would receive around 4%, and Fanning would receive around 9%, should they choose to participate. If they didn't choose, one of them did not choose to participate, or both of them, we would get 100%. If one of them chose, then that percentage would be rolled back in, and we would do that same calculation to determine, you know, what percentage the other entity would receive.
Todd,
Yes.
just a question,
Mhm.
and May can't answer it now, but just the thought of because of a comment you made earlier.
Mhm.
Fanning being half Levy
Mhm.
and half Gilchrist.
Yeah.
The number that we would have used here, will this number maybe be split in half? And
be honest,
we can't answer that question
Yeah,
now,
to be
but I thought
honest,
about that.
you know, we had that conversation,
Okay,
and we didn't get to an answer on that.
Okay.
Like, for simplified purposes, we just,
I agree. It was just,
yeah,
Right.
this is the total cost, and so we would have to determine that and try and figure
maybe
out
get a ruling on that of how we would do it, yeah. And
probably an AGO opinion, maybe.
I didn't really expect an answer, it's just something I thought of now, like you said a minute ago, ask it before you forget it.
Yeah, that's right. And we did consider that, but for the purposes of this, we don't really know the answer, so.
Right,
And it doesn't 100% affect us greatly because
No, it doesn't.
we would still get approximately the same percentage either way.
right now for fire,
Mhm.
special assessment, Trenton is at a reduced rate, right, for special assessment, for
Trenton has their own fire assessment.
Okay, so they have their own.
They
That's
currently
solid
have
waste I'm thinking of, never mind.
yes.
Okay, so Trenton right now, they do not participate in our, special assessment.
Not for fire, no,
Right.
ma'am. The only entity that does is
It's
Bell.
Bell, okay,
Mhm.
and then for the MSTU for, EMS, Trenton does participate in that.
Correct.
Fanning does participate in that,
Correct.
because we provide them services,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
then, of course, Bell, okay.
That's right.
So Todd, if
Absolutely.
we did this, this would be our projection on what we would collect or possibly get.
Correct.
So we would have to reduce our MSTU
Correct.
in
And-
that amount.
And we're actually
So
going
that we wind up with the same amount of money, we just got 2 funding sources.
Correct. And we're actually going to, in just a second, I'll kind of break that down. So looking at the blue in the very middle, this gives you a breakdown of what the MSTU generated as well as the fire assessment for each of the 5 prior years. For this year, you see that the MSTU is at 1.00, which would have generated for this year $1,342,000. The fire assessment at 177 per unit generates 1.3 million, just over. So the total for all of those is around $2,655,000. For the estimate, we're estimating that we would generate or receive around $1,869,000. So if you take that and you reduce the amount that's being collected by the MSTU and the fire assessment, that would mean that potentially you could reduce your MSTU from 1.00 to 0.22893. And you could reduce your fire assessment from $177 per parcel to $34.79.
Wow.
So
Cut it in half.
So it would be a considerable savings for property owners, and provide the ability to allow, people from the outside the county
Pay a little bit.
to pay a little bit as well.
I have a question, Todd.
Yes, sir.
If the city of Trenton chose to participate
Mhm.
in the 1%, they would then have to reduce their special assessment, just like the county would have to reduce theirs.
Correct. Yeah, as well as Fanning. I don't believe Fanning has a special assessment.
Right.
I believe theirs is within their ad valorem tax. But basically, the statute states that you have to, however you're funding your current fire services, you have to reduce that by the amount that you receive.
Gotcha.
So each entity, if they choose to participate, they also have to choose to reduce.
Mhm.
So if they choose not to participate, then they just don't receive the funds, and it would be distributed by,
They keep their same special assessment.
they would just keep it as it is, status quo. But if they do choose to participate, then they do have to reduce.
So a property owner would only help fund fire if they bought some.
Correct.
On this part of it, to help
They-
fund this part.
Well,
of
no,
it.
they're gonna
So-
still have to
they're
pay a
still
little
gonna
bit,
have to-
$34.
Yeah, they're still going to participate a little bit
Yeah,
within
yeah,
the,
right.
Yep.
But they wouldn't pay what they're paying now.
Right.
Unless you
Correct.
bought something. Of course, once you bought something, you would help fund it, just like a tourist would or anybody
Correct.
else. But that makes, you got a whole lot more people, that can participate other than just the landlord.
that's
Yeah.
right.
Because when somebody gets in a wreck, passing through our county, that's the fire truck they're calling. So right now, they're not paying anything.
Right,
So hopefully if they're passing through, they're stopping, they're spending money at our stores.
right. The only other thing that I have is, on page 8, it just kind of gives you a history of the MSTU as far as our millage rate. The millage rate that we've utilized over the past 10 years, the amount that we budgeted and received, and you can just kind of see a history of what that did over time. And, again, with this, your MSTU would be reduced about 78%, and your fire assessment would be reduced by about $143 a unit. So, just to kind of give you a general timeline again, what would happen moving forward. Again, should the board choose to want to move forward with this, the board would need to pass the ordinance that starts the process. Once the board passes that ordinance, we would notify OPAGA so that they could start scheduling the performance audit. The performance audit would have to occur. Again, the performance audit typically takes anywhere from 3 to 6 months. And so, it is somewhat of a time factor. We have plenty of time at this point, obviously, because we're still about a year and a half out from the election. But because it does take 3 to 6 months, you do have to make sure you get this implemented in plenty of time so that OPAGA can start their audit and get it completed, so that it can get advertised prior to the deadline. I know there was another county, another small county that started this process. They actually went through the referendum. It was right around the time that the performance audit requirement was started. They missed that piece. And so they got it approved by the voters, but still were not able to implement because they missed that step. They missed the timing, and it didn't get done in time.
So what would happen if we projected that we would take in $1 million in sales tax, and we built that into our budget, and what if we collected 2 million?
You have to adjust it the next
You just
year.
have to adjust it the
Mhm.
next year?
Yes. Yeah, you have to adjust it based on, it's basically forward moving. You budget this year based on the estimate, and then next year you make an adjustment based
On
on
the actual.
actual.
Result.
Yeah.
These funds are just like your current MSTU and your special assessment. They can't be used anywhere else. They have to be used there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if we collect over, it would just kind of roll to your fund balance, but while you made the adjustment, or it fit in there somehow, but it would have to stay in that department.
Well, yeah, and that's the part that to be honest, it does get a little confusing as far as if we over collect. If you over collect, too much, there is the potential that you have to rebate, what you received.
What if we undercollect?
Now, if you under collect, that becomes more of an issue. Like, that becomes a problem because, you don't have the funds to fund it. And to be honest, that's one of the reasons I went so far back on slide, I think it was slide 5. Because I did want you to see that, there is a potential, that's one of the downsides to this funding method is it does have fluctuation. If you fund this through special assessment, you know how many parcels you have, you know exactly how much money you should collect, and you can budget based on that. It's somewhat of a 1 + 1 = 2 type math scenarios, because that you've got X parcels, you're going to collect,
We have these many parcels.
in essence, you're going to collect this amount of money,
If everybody pays their tax.
as long as everybody pays their taxes, which everybody eventually does,
Yeah.
in essence.
You get it somewhere.
It's just, who's paying it. With a surtax, it's going to fluctuate.
Yeah.
And that's why I showed you all the way back to 2005.
Right.
Because as you can see, we started out at 603. In 06, it went up a little bit. In 07, down. 08, down. 09, down. And in 2009, we collected 552,778. So in that year, you collected less than the prior year. The year before that, less than the prior year. And so, the bottom line is you're constantly budgeting based on, you may not collect what you did the prior year.
And one of the things that Chief Campbell and I were talking one day this week, and I think one of the things that caused some of this to spike the way it was is, I can't remember just when, but a couple of years ago, they went to taxing online sales. For a good while, online sales weren't
Correct.
taxed. So when that happened, because I think the state
It was
estimated
actually-
that something in billions of dollars to the state.
It was
of Florida.
during COVID that actually was initiated.
19
That's
and
where you
20.
see the huge spike.
Yeah. So
And that probably is the
That's
factor,
some of the,
is you started collecting sales tax that wasn't being collected.
right.
I guess
Yeah.
one negative would be if the economy crashed and the Great Depression come back, our sales might be way lower than anticipated. I don't
Yes.
think that's gonna happen, but, if sales went down is where you'd have to start worrying.
Yes, and the thing about it is as of right now, you basically have other funding sources.
Yeah.
You're generating, with this scenario, you're generating the majority of your revenues through sales tax. You're supplementing currently because we haven't eliminated it. We haven't taken it to zero because we can't. So, right now you're supplementing with the fire assessment. You're supplementing with an MSTU.
Well,
And,
serving
know-
on a couple economic boards, now that we have, Central Florida has built out the internet, the fiber optic, you're gonna see more home-based business. You're gonna see more home sales and stuff like that, because before, if you tried to get a business to come to Gilchrist County, and talking to some of the people that already live here,
Yeah.
their capabilities was limited because the first question was, what's your internet capability? Well, we don't have none.
right.
So, I know of a business over there in Riverwalk, a home-based business, and he was very limited on what he could do. But now, he can do business all over the world, and he can really expand his business, and more people can do that because they have those capabilities of doing that. So, you should see sales go up more than anything else.
What other disadvantages are there to this? I see fluctuations are a possibility.
Mhm.
What other disadvantages are there that y'all see?
I think that's the primary disadvantage that I see is the fluctuation, it makes it a little bit more challenging to budget, because you don't know 100% what you're gonna do. The process of, evaluating what you collected the prior year and making those adjustments, makes it a little bit more complicated for budgeting. I mean, I think that's the biggest disadvantage for us. It just makes it a little bit more challenging.
Thing
But,
is, if we order a fire truck, it takes us 3 years to get it.
Uh-huh.
We don't have to pay for it, Robbie.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems at the state level, some of the leadership is promoting more exemption or even doing away with ad valorem property tax. So this would be kind of in line with reducing the property tax. I'm not sure they'd be in favor of even, I don't know how it fits with the current thinking. What I've heard is go down on property tax and no other tax. But I'm not sure how that would work.
Yeah, I'm not sure how you do that and provide the service. I mean, you can eliminate the service of, like, you can't really eliminate fire and EMS. I mean, I don't, outside of taking EMS private, I don't know. I don't know how you would, you can't really have a private fire service, I don't think, wouldn't work.
If I heard right yesterday, they're even tossing around reducing the sales tax, the state sales tax that they pay.
I heard something about trying to reduce it 0.5% or something like that. And again, I mean, some of the bills that have been tossed around this year, I feel like they haven't had enough discussion with municipalities and counties.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think they totally understand the process. And again, I know I've seen lots of discussion about, they're really stepping on home rule here. They're really, kind of getting in the way of local entities being able to manage what services they provide. And, I think there's some, discussions are always, I mean, are never harmful, but I think it's, as long as those discussions bring understanding.
All the pluses and minuses and figure out, what's the end result. Then make a decision.
Yes.
Don't make the decision and find out later.
So how much fire ad valorem currently is? About a third of our budget? Is that right?
Our current ad valorem is, it's right at $12 million.
Last time I checked with Damon, it was 11 something.
So of our
Between 11 and 12.
operating budget, that's, I mean, 60 million is including grants and
Correct.
projects and not our operating.
Correct.
What amount would 11.5, 12 million make up of our operating budget?
Of our actual operating? About 30%.
Is there any way to bring us back what the true operating would be? That way we could see, versus if the property taxes
Yeah, what I
did
heard,
go away.
I heard in Tallahassee is, so what, if that happened, basically you lose the ad valorem, which nobody that I've talked to would probably think they want to continue paying that, but they also want services. So what services will we cut if we lose that 11.5 or 12 million? And
If you lose the 11.5 or 12 million, then you basically eliminated.
Eliminate everything.
You eliminated fire, EMS, road,
Animal
public
control.
safety,
Well, no,
basically all the constitutional
I
offices.
think we need to
Yeah.
somehow summarize that and message that to people, because I don't know if everybody understands that part of it. And,
Yeah.
garbage or solid waste or roads
Yeah, I mean, basically, if the,
Fire
if the state did not provide, so if they just said, hey, we're eliminating, the ability for counties and municipalities to tax, and not providing some sort of additional way to fund it, your schools have gone away. Your, basically, any service that we provide is no longer able to be funded outside of services that are paid for. So, I mean, I guess EMS, you could continue to run your ambulances and charge, and we'd have to just, so we could continue to run EMS, but just have to jack our rates way up in order to fund the rest of.
In talking with Cracker Johnson, he reported to us that what they're tossing around is like a consumption tax.
Yeah,
So if Gilchrist County lost $11 million, the whole state would set up like a big pool of everybody donating like you would sales tax now or whatever. And then whatever you lost, you would be able to replace out of that pot. In other words, Miami-Dade would collect a lot of money on a consumption tax or something like that, way more than what they needed. So it would go into kitty, and then poor old Gilchrist County would say, okay, I lost $11 million in ad valorem taxes, give me $11 million, so you'd be able to replace that. I think they're gonna have to do something like that to be able to do with ad valorem. They can't just say, hey, y'all lost $11 million last year, deal with it.
So based on the 1% that we've been talking about, you would have to increase an additional 6% in sales tax to replace $11 million.
They'll have to have some type of replacement mechanism to replace it with all the rural counties, and they were talking about some type of consumption tax or something. To be able to do that.
That would also affect our fiscally constrained laws as well.
Yep.
Get the property. You get those replacements of 25,000 for the seniors, 25.
Yeah.
Homestead exemption.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I did a little,
It's gonna affect what we collect because the state makes up for that because we can't charge it to our citizens. So they give us a certain amount.
I did a little checking today on it because I knew we was probably gonna have this discussion. Senate Bill 852 is probably the one that may get the most attention, and I think it might be so they can just complement the rest of them, and that's basically the study to how they could do this and how they could perform it. All of the ones that's just wanting to come in and do the eliminations, everybody's a little scared of that for the same reason the discussions are here is if you come up and you cut this out, are we going to be a state made up of counties, or are we just going to be a state? And so the one that's, if it's seems to be getting any attention, if it makes it, is the study, so that they can perform a study.
Yeah, and my understanding of the study is the study would be implemented and they would have to have it completed, I think, by like October.
It would, yeah.
It would be fairly
take
quick.
3 or 4 years to get this.
Well, no, they were trying to, my understanding was is if they were to pass it, they're trying to streamline this to get the study done so that they could get this on the ballot for 26. A constitutional amendment, which would have to, of course, be passed by 60%, of the voters. And I do see that as a bigger possibility of passing as far as the ones that are out there. I mean, they seem like they would get a little bit more traction because it technically doesn't officially do anything other than create a study.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, they want to get it, do what they've got to do, but they've got a lot of, there's a lot to this. It's not.
Yeah.
Well, if you did do away with ad valorem taxes, it'd go right back to the same concept as your sales tax. Everybody that bought something on a consumption tax would help you pay your ad valorem taxes replacement because they would be sharing in the revenue cost, So people who don't own land would be buying products, and that money would be using to supplement our budget. So
yeah,
I mean, it's a lot of people look at it that way. Some of the people I've talked to, And even in the people in Tallahassee that we talked to, that I talked to, said it's mostly just, for discussion right now. It's most likely not gonna,
I
really
think,
start until they do more.
for discussion purposes,
Yeah.
I think the concept that we have here on the fire, where you have multiple methods of generating what you need in order to provide the service, would make more sense. So in other words, rather than them coming and just saying you can't charge an ad valorem tax, maybe create some sort of a faceted approach, because again, it's like Richard said earlier, the challenge to the sales tax method is you remove control from local government. Like you don't have any control over what revenues you have. So if you go to 100% sales tax method, you're limited. This is exactly what you're going to get. You're not going to get a penny more. You don't have the ability to increase, if you needed it.
Depends on the consumer. It'll all be
Correct.
about
It
the
all
consumer.
depends on the consumer. And, if you have those, down years where sales tax goes down, again, then, again, it does give governments opportunity to tighten a belt, which is not always bad. But the question is, if you're already kind of got it pulled a little tight and now you don't have that revenue and you have no way to, then you have to cut the service, and, again, I mean, sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. Depends on the service.
Yeah.
And it depends on if you need it.
But with two revenue sources like that, one sometimes can be adjusted. In other words, if your sales down, then your next budget year, you have to wait a year, but the next budget year, you could ease back up and still get the revenue that you're looking for. You may have to suffer a year to
Correct.
be able to do it.
And that's why, like, if the state were to look at trying to do some sort of adjustment to ad valorem, that might make a little bit more sense. Maybe reduce the max cap that counties can charge on ad valorem and then do the sales tax method to supplement the amount that's being reduced.
Todd, is it 1% or nothing, or can it 0.5%?
It can be,
Can't be over one, though.
it can't be over one. And if you do less than one, the only way you could ever change that is by referendum. So, if you chose to go with a quarter or a half, or 3/4, that's where you're at, unless you go back to referendum, and again, it has to be in a general election.
First glance, 1% sounds good as a property owner, I won't reduce the property, but when you talk about reliability of revenue, fluctuations, even if you do something,
To be honest, I mean, just in looking at it, I mean, I think you have the ability on an annual basis, to reevaluate, based on what's going on. So, I mean, yeah, you could look at doing a lower amount, but I think that, again, the difficulty in getting this in place, I think you'd be better off going with the 1%.
Yeah, but you could only change it every 2 years.
Yeah, I think that would
Right.
be best if we did
Right.
it.
Any other thoughts or questions?
I know I've talked to a few people, and of course, they say if they take away ad valorem, said how are we gonna operate the county? Some of them I've talked to.
But we're not taking, we're
No,
not,
no, no,
oh,
I
you're
mean,
talking
if
about,
the state-
okay.
And then the other thing they say is, I kind of mentioned how we was talking about, and they said, hey, anything you can move to a sales tax, we're for it. Because where they feel at is while they don't mind paying their share, they just want that share to be equalized over everyone that uses the service. I haven't run the numbers in the last couple of years. Todd, you or Richard may have, but I think the last time we looked at it, it was something like 47% of the people didn't pay any ad valorem in the county. I haven't looked at it since the housing boom and that type of thing, but just a lot of people that have said they like the sales tax and make it, and like you said, it does create, but if we have a slump in sales tax, we're gonna have a slump in other things too. So that could mean home values could go down, which could affect ad valorem, which
Yes.
could affect your MSTU, you know, so we could have a number of obstacles we're trying to get through at that time. And we'll have to adjust and work through those like we have in the past. And
Yeah.
then,
Yeah, that is yeah, I didn't even really think about that aspect of it is, you know, if you do have a decline in sales tax, it's because you're in recession and your property values are going to decline based on that. So you're still going to have a decline on the ad valorem side. Now, on the special assessment side, that's fixed based on what the board determines. So, you know, that would not fluctuate. But on the ad valorem side, it would fluctuate based on, you know, reduction in value. So
the collection of that special assessment could fluctuate.
that could drop as well. You're right.
One problem
That
for
seems
sure,
to be what happens sometimes. when that-
our cost of providing the services is not gonna go down. They're only gonna go up.
Yeah.
So, that's one thing we have to kind of plan for. You're not gonna, fire trucks ain't gonna get no cheaper.
Right. That's right.
Todd, I think you or Bob, you want to mention the governor's office had asked for our financial information. They're asking all the counties.
They are.
And so the Doge at the state level, do we have any more information related to that other than that gathering information at this point?
Yeah, so basically we received an email, you know, that indicated that they're looking at every entity's financial situation. They had some specific questions for every entity. You know, are you in compliance with all of these different things? And so we actually just responded today, you know, with a letter, you know, indicating, you know, our financial status. And in addition to that, they're basically reviewing everyone's, you know, financial audits, and which I thought was a little interesting because they're actually supposed to be doing that every year anyway. But they,
It's part of the other fund that they that are those are
Now, is this like Bay County? I saw where the governor had something on his Facebook page here, probably a week ago or something,
Mhm.
where they are passing, like a resolution, you know, to work with the, Doge,
Mhm.
whatever it's called. So they're coming in and doing a, like an complete, like an audit or whatever. Is that something
You talking
different?
about Jefferson County?
No, this is Bay County.
Okay. I haven't seen
Volunteer
anything
work
with
with
Bay.
Florida Doge
I saw
team to
something
review
about,
local spending and financial practices.
I saw Jefferson County was asking for additional, like wanting to do some additional things. But I didn't see that with Bay County.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know if that's something, if that's available,
The-
if they can come in like and do a, you know, look at us and make sure we're, you know, not overspending and spending what we
Mhm.
should be spending.
The letter that they sent out, it basically was asking if we've ever had a failure to pay short-term loans or obligations when due.
Maybe
If
the
we've
same
ever-
thing, I'm not
If we ever
sure.
had a failure to make debt service payments on bonds, loans, or other debt instruments, if we ever had a failure to timely pay any uncontested claims from creditors, a failure to transfer taxes, social security contributions, or retirement plan contributions, and if we had any unreserved or total fund balance deficits in the
Did we
general
have
fund.
a negative to any of those questions?
No, sir, we had, in my opinion, we had a good report to provide, so.
So this is the rest of it. I just pulled it up. It's in Bay County, the county commissioner will be adopting a resolution to collaborate with the Florida Doge and review finances. So I don't know if that's the same thing or they're doing,
Do the same thing.
yeah.
Do it, right?
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, the board chose to do that, I mean, we could do that,
Yeah.
But again, I think that's kind of what we're doing as we speak, but, without the resolution, but.
It's kind of already, because before the audit board that I had 2 years ago, particularly at that time, they came up with standards where they said, from now on, one of the things that auditors are now going to be able to do is the government and businesses that you're looking at and their going concern principle. Going concern principle is, are they going to last for the next 12, 14 months or maybe beyond? With some of the GASB came out of what the audit officers as well. The mountain said, you got to think beyond 12 months. And none of us had to put the ball for a fortune time. So it's become something that is more and more important from the auditors will go in and will assess. Do we think he's down to the well, that's part of the procedure.
Which is not a bad idea.
Yeah.
But that's more in line of financial stability and correct practices and making
Well, it's
sure.
also all those guidelines that you just
Okay.
set out.
But not necessarily efficiencies or performance, kind of like, maybe like we're talking about with the fire rescue, they might do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then you have to develop some discussion about, evaluate where we are, what we've done, what we've accomplished, where we make improvements, and that's a little bit different. That's operational and managerial. Auditors cannot be managerial. Will you help us with the budget?
That may be where the state's going, because I know when I was with the state government, we had that in our budget. You basically said, I'm gonna do this many things in this area over the next year. And you had performance measures. And I don't know if that's what they're thinking on the county level, or we'll see. We'll find out.
Anybody got anything else?
So the next step for this would be what, as far as timing and board reconsidering?
I think the next step is for the board to kind of make a determination, does this make sense for Gilchrist County? Do we like this concept? And if so, I mean, I think it would be moving forward with drafting the ordinance, approving the ordinance, and again, once you approve the ordinance, all that does is starts the ball rolling.
Yeah.
It doesn't actually do anything.
Puts it on the ballot.
And the audit has to come before
Right,
that.
the audit has to occur, so if the board chooses to move forward, so I mean, I guess my question would be to the board is, how do you want to move forward? Do you want to have additional discussion? Do we want to bring this to a board meeting in the future, like maybe to approve, moving to ordinance, and then basically getting the ordinance drafted? And, then at some other meeting in the future, we would have that ordinance come before the board. The board would have to approve it or
I mean, this
fail
is
it.
the first I've seen this. I mean, I would like to talk to my
Sure.
constituents and, but I think it's something that may be a good thing,
My recommendation is, if we are going to move forward, if the board decides, yes, this is a great idea, let's move forward with this. My recommendation will be, this year, we need to get this moving forward. Because that way we don't put ourselves on a timeline to where we're right down to the wire. We want to make sure that we can get this to OPAGA so that they can start the audit process, and so they can get their part done so that we can get it advertised before the election.
Why don't we do this, get Bill updated on what's going on?
Okay?
And then in about 90 days, let's readdress it. Either
Okay.
decide to do an ordinance or decide not to do an ordinance, decide to wait longer or whatever. But I think we should,
About 3 months.
within 90 days, we should
Yeah.
look at it again
Okay.
and make a decision. That would give us plenty of time to do the ordinance and the audit and everything else that we would have.
And we can do that during a regular meeting, have this on the agenda to look at.
I think one thing that would be helpful is if you could have a one-page summary of advantages, disadvantages, why we would want to consider this.
Yeah.
And that way you can, we're all talking to people. We're
Yeah.
talking the same kind of
Yeah,
thing.
and basically, I would think what we would do is, at the meeting, we discuss this, we'll, come up with some sort of streamlined explanation of what we're looking at doing, just so at another public meeting, the people that are here will understand what you're discussing, and
So we won't make a decision in 3 months. We'll just have another meeting then, or?
we'll, I guess,
think we certainly should address it within 90 days.
Yeah, so
So
we need
in-
to have another meeting, but not make the decision at that meeting, and then have one more.
I
and make
think,
the
I
decision.
think what would you do is,
another
we'll
workshop.
discuss it, in 3 months, and maybe have the board choose to vote, do we move forward with bringing an ordinance forward?
Yep.
Would that make sense, Mr. Lang?
Makes sense. I would like to see, I don't like to fix something that's potentially not broken until I know what the ramifications on the other end are gonna be. If we could find a couple of these other counties that have already implemented this and see what their input is on this, would they recommend going forward to it, or have they locked themselves into
That'd be a
something
good
that they wish they had not done?
That's the challenge.
They might say it's a nightmare.
There,
They
so,
might say it's a nightmare, that's what I'm
yeah,
saying. Or-
the challenge is that there's currently only one entity that's had it in place for any length of time.
So we're proposing cutting edge technology here as far as.
I don't know if I'd say cutting edge. I'd say that we're implementing something, we're creating a resolution to an issue that we've been talking about for years, which is
Yeah.
people are
taxes
unhappy with
down.
our property
Well,
taxes.
a couple of things, I've just sat here and listened because I'm certainly not an expert on this, but I did read the statute when I came here. Number one, I didn't like the fact that we turn our money over to DOR and they reallocate it back to us. That was number one. I like to have our money that we spend. And the second thing was what Mr. Romans pointed out as far as if you saw that you needed to, raise your MTSU or something like that, you have the immediate authority to do that, but you lock yourself in on this, so.
Well,
Not knowing what happens down
We
the
can
road.
raise it
kinda
the next
makes it
year,
hard.
though. We can raise
yeah,
our
you
MSTP.
can raise it the
next year.
following year based on, so let's just say, expenses are going up, and so you have a higher, expenditure need. You still have the ability that you have those in place as of right now. We're not eliminating them at this point. So you do have the ability moving forward to use that revenue source if you had to.
Well, don't get me wrong, I'm not anti on this because of the fact, I like the fact that it's gonna be spread out over the general population for the sales. Everybody's gonna pay a portion
Yes.
if this works out, if you choose to go that way. But I just was curious how any of these other counties that might have implemented this, and now you're saying.
Yeah, Liberty County's the only entity that currently has it, that's had it in place for some time. Again, Hamilton County just passed it this past November. And so I did speak to Hamilton County briefly about it, but they're brand new
They
with
don't
it,
know
so
yet.
they don't really know.
Can
Yeah.
you check with Liberty County and see how they
I
like it?
can definitely check with Liberty, before our next discussion on it and kind of get their feel. The bad thing is they have a brand new clerk, so he's not gonna know a ton about it, but I may be able to talk to the county as well, or maybe, within his finance
How long do
department.
you think they've had it in Liberty County?
Liberty's had it for probably 10 years.
Really? So it is historically
Yeah,
pretty firm as far as what
yeah.
they've experienced.
One point about this is, some of the big
They don't need it.
Yeah, they don't need it.
More money, they don't.
so they weigh the need of needing the money versus what you have to, the hoops you have to jump through.
But some of your larger I mean, I agree with you, I don't disagree. But I remember one time Alachua County needed to build a courthouse, so they put a sales tax in for a year or two and raised like $30-40 million in that couple of years to build it, which I know that's a little different, but we don't have that, but because we are tied up in the small county surtax.
Yeah, on top of that, I mean, this is something that we've looked at and considered for years,
Yeah, this is,
but it's just so difficult to get it in place. It's such a lengthy process. And so, every time we've looked at it, we were so far out from an election, we're like, well, I guess let's look at that when we get closer to the next election. And then, circumstances have changed it just didn't seem like the right time. I mean, there's just been a number of reasons why. I've got a folder here that, I keep on my desk, and every once in a while we pull it back out and, reevaluate all the different, revenue options available for Gilchrist County. But again, it's not just an easy process of, hey, let's do this. You know, you go through all these steps, you know, and,
Well, the
so I think
voters
that's
have-
one of the reasons that,
Voters
that-
have to approve it too.
right, the voters have to approve it. And, you know, there's always a question of, you know, do we really want to bring that this time around? You know, so again, you know, I know we've looked at this several times,
Yeah.
but not really gotten to this point.
Well, I think
And-
some of the problem that you and I have had in the past, or when we've discussed it, is the collection wasn't high enough that we were going to
Right.
be able to benefit the citizen that much on the MSTU or the special assessment. So it really didn't look like we were doing anything for them. But as you can see now, the revenues are spiked so hard, and I agree, anything can change. But now you can see, I mean, if
That's
it worked
exactly
out
right.
exactly the way it was presented today, if we were doing it now, basically you'd save $140 on your fire assessment next
Yeah,
year.
the first time we
Yeah,
looked
yeah.
at that, that was exactly the reason. We looked at it and we said, well, shoot, we can only generate around $700,000 or $800,000, and it's not really that big of a, you know, is it really worth the process that it's going to take to get this in place, you know? And it's like now, you know, it really does look like it could be very beneficial.
The
You know,
num-
we could really eliminate, you know, a chunk of somebody's property tax bill.
The numbers you have in here now, based on a lot of the newer home values that are being built, you're probably saving people in these numbers, if we were working under that, anywhere from $300 to $500 a year. The thing is now, I may go out and buy a lot of extra stuff, and I may spend $700 in sales tax extra next year.
Well,
But-
there is that
But I don't
potential.
realize I do it, because I do it a little.
Well, we were talking about that earlier, actually, and there is that potential, but
That's my choice.
for better or
That's
for,
your choice, though.
for better or for worse, though, in Gilchrist County, you know, we don't have a car dealership, you know, where we're, you know, purchasing a vehicle. You know, we don't have a Walmart where, you know, unfortunately, a lot of us spend our money. You know, we don't have, you know, now online, you know, we are, you know, I think online is the big deal.
Yep.
You know, the more people are purchasing online, the more this, you know, revenue is going to increase. But, you know, we don't have some of those options available where a lot of people spend their sales tax dollars. But again, we do know that about $1.8 million is being generated for something that's being purchased. Mhm. Yeah, that was the last time we looked at it. The last time we looked at it, we didn't have time to get it in on the next
You
election.
couldn't make it.
Mhm. Because of the OPOG audit.
Todd, do they have a surtax for law enforcement?
They do not.
Okay. The other thing, I don't know if this is appropriate for this workshop, but it's talking funding revenues, is I've gotten quite a bit of input related to impact fees. And so I don't know if that's something the board would be interested in us taking another look at.
I get a lot of,
Yeah.
For the last 10 years that I inherited, when I came here in 2015, and I have not been able to spend them, we all balance these things, what's right.
That's transportation,
And
right?
then they say no because of the nexus that has to be
Yeah.
built between the person who pays the impact fee and the benefits they receive.
Yeah. I hear you, Richard.
Yeah.
I can tell you about that.
Yeah.
Is when I did the city of Wildwood, they had an impact fee of $7,500 to get into their water and sewer bill. But how it was effective is I went to build a house. They charged me $7,500, but then they turned around and used that very $7,500 to put sanitation and water into my house.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, I hear you. I don't want to do like we've done in the past. What I'd like to figure out is if there is a specific thing we could do, like in law enforcement, or whatever, whatever it is.
Go look at sorry.
Well, we just need to look at it again. If we
Yeah.
wanna look at it, we gonna look at it.
Yeah.
you know?
So
Right.
says and how it's designed
Right.
to work.
Well,
Cities all.
I don't,
we
yeah, I
can still
don't
look
believe
at
law
it.
enforcement is an option for impact
Okay.
fees.
You know.
Mr. Lang, are you aware of law enforcement's
What,
impact fee?
what about for transportation to turn some of these
Tran-
dirt roads?
transportation-
Transportation and capital,
Yeah.
public capital. facilities,
Transportation
but-
is specifically for capital
Would
improvement.
it help with these roads that are being traveled on more to chip and seal some of them?
You have to prove it's based on growth.
Yeah,
Well,
but the thing
and
that
that's
you're
what-
going to need to do is to rewrite how you use your impact fees, because the way the percentages are now,
Absolutely.
you're not going to collect the money in any area. So you will need to look at those areas, we'll need to budget and see what, and we need to make it fit where we can spend the money.
but-
That's what we're gonna have
How
to do.
about, getting somebody like North Florida Professionals that deals with lots of counties to just gather some information like they did with accessory structures? And then they bring that back to us and with the idea that it be specific to something we can document, is for new growth, and it would help offset something we're spending money on.
Well, I think you probably need somebody like Neighbors Giblin, attorneys at law that do the, impact fees for a lot of these counties that did our pooled loan that we did recently.
Okay.
I mean, they're statewide, and they have one department, that's what they handle. They could advise you a lot better. I mean, there's several people that do that, several professionals, but that's their expertise.
I know that
It'd be
when
more
we
so
looked at,
than engineering.
when we looked at this last time, a couple of years ago, I called different counties. I've got to find my folder, but you know, what percentage that, and I know I sat down with you, Mr. Crosby, also, but the different things, and I can't remember off the top of my head, like the percentage of different things they used it for. But, I will just have to find that folder, but that was several years ago, but we need to see how other counties, what they're using it for.
Well, I think a lot of that, there's specific limited things that you can use it for, as Mr. Romans was pointing out. If you have, like in Tampa, a county that generates a lot of growth and a lot of revenue might need to build a new highway. And we all know how much a highway costs. We get them grant funded, if we're lucky. But Hillsborough County or something, just for example, does not get them grant funded. They have to pay for it. Well, if they have to build that road because they can prove it's experienced and based upon the growth, then they can collect that impact fee, put it in the pool and pay for that highway. Our problem here is we can't gather up enough money on that particular type of project to stay ahead of what the cost of doing it is. So the money just sits in the account. That's been the issue. And we can come back with a list of limited things that you can
For
impose
chip and seal.
impact fees on. We already know two, any kind of public facilities you can use it for, capital facilities improvements, if you're building it because growth has caused you to build
It
it.
has to be tied to it.
It has to be tied to growth.
But I thought we went up on our permit fees and all those, so we wouldn't have to deal with the impact fee. In other words, we charged $1 a square foot on the house rather than go up on the impact fee, but re-implement the impact fee. I thought that's where the.
You did, but you could honestly, based on the, inflation rate, there's some areas that you probably could use their impact fees in. And as we're talking, we're looking at a couple of facilities that we need to build, that you could very easily justify growth, to them, because when.
And look at the library right now. They're busting out of the seams.
Well, when you got a facility that's 25, 30, 40 years old, it's pretty easy to justify that the population that was 40 years ago is not the population
That's true.
today. So that, especially if you hadn't did any expansion or anything to your buildings. So that's why I said, the statute's pretty clear on what you can and cannot use it for. I do agree, you probably should hire somebody, but I think maybe the first thing we should do is look at that statute before we hire somebody and just say, okay, can we use it anywhere, and how could we use it if we can do it?
Yeah, so
And I think that would be it.
The rub,
You have it pulled up?
I've got it pulled up right now. Like, it talks about for infrastructure, for capital outlay, for public facilities. The public facilities one, of course, is tough because, I mean, you start talking about the amount of money you need for public facilities, and it's not going to generate the kind of money you're looking for. But it says that, oh, was just looking at it. Specific purpose of the impact fee, including the specific infrastructure needs to be met, including but not limited to transportation, parks, water, sewer, and schools.
The transportation, we could, these roads that are heavily traveled, that we're seeing more people travel because
Well, here's the problem with
people
that.
moving in,
I'll tell you what the problem with that is.
we could chip and
Sharon.
fill.
It can't be used for maintenance or for subsidizing something that's already there, and that's always been the case.
Right.
Just because they're wearing out our road, the road is there, but we can't use it for general maintenance items. That's
Right,
prohibited.
and again, talking about specific nexus, like when you talk about transportation, it's supposed to go to the benefit of the people that are paying the impact fee. So, like, let's say the high traffic road, if you don't have people attached to those roads that are paying the impact fee, like, my concern would be, could those people come back to the county and say, you utilize my funds to
It's a
pave this,
two-part test. You have to meet both phones.
you use this to pave this road across the county.
Yeah.
It's not benefiting me in any way.
Yeah, I live
I want
down
my-
there and you use my impact.
Right,
fee to pay
I
the
want
road
my
up
money
there.
back. And that's my concern is,
Then how are other counties doing it, or are they doing it? Yeah, so,
Yeah.
so. Right, I think our problem was our percentages were not correct. I mean, we had.
I know that was one of our issues
That was
last
a big
time,
issue. Yeah,
when
that's
we were
what
looking
had.
at it, that
We don't,
we
it has to be
definitely needed to
different.
adjust
Absolutely.
how it was done.
It was
But-
what, Sharon?
Our percentages were not correct, like we had them in like,
We had a percentage going to public facilities, which was hard to ever get enough money to
Oh,
do
yeah, yeah.
anything.
Well, I
You
think
know.
we finally used it on the record storage building. I don't think it was like a couple $100,000 in there or something,
It wasn't even that much,
I
no.
don't think it's
It was like,
100,000.
yeah, it wasn't very much at all. But, to me, the transportation side is the biggest potential benefit to the county, where we might be able to, maybe we could figure out a way to use those, being as there is consideration to start doing some sort of chip and seal program. And of course, I guess the schools is kind of a requirement to be in the impact fee, I believe.
unless they opt out, they opted in last time, so they were.
Yeah,
Well, there also a bill that Duke mentioned in the last meeting, that, for the rural counties, and part of that $200 billion is that, a portion is about the farm to market,
yeah,
funding,
yeah,
and some of these roads that are getting tore up by the, people harvesting melons and silage and stuff like that. I think we're gonna be able to tap into some of that money to be able to fix our roads, if it passes, which it passed the House, unanimously 39-0. So, Corey Simon's, I think, the one that sponsored it, but,
These are good.
from whatever I heard, it's a good bill, and it's gonna really, really help the rural counties
Yeah.
tremendously.
yeah.
It's gonna be for healthcare, it's gonna be for roads, it's gonna be for all kind of different things that they named off that you'd be able to tap into that for. And I think that would be a source for us to be able to fix some of our roads if we go after some of that money. If it becomes available, and I really believe it will. It's a unanimous vote, 100%.
That's right.
Everybody's gotta be happy with it. Okay, anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion on the second.